Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 387th meeting since we started. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give an hour to make a presentation. If anybody interrupts the speaker, we remind the interrupter that we listen only one fool at a time. That's one of our rules. Then we have questions and answers from the audience, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium here to respond to what the speaker had to say, for or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets comment to close the meeting. That's how it works. But before we introduce our speaker, we have time for announcements. Anybody have any announcements they want to make? Any announcements?
Go vote.
Go vote?
Oh, we voted.
Yeah. Well, on November 7th, there's a vote to go vote. Yes. We voted early. I don't know if that's on it.
Yeah.
That was on the school thing. I'm not sure if that's on the early voting or not. Anyway.
It is.
It is? Good. Next week we have is November 4th. We'll have George Blue Jacket to talk about will there be a global economic collapse. I'm not going to read all this. It's on your itinerary.
Thank God.
November 11th. November 11th we have the heist, how corporations hijacked America. That's also on the itinerary. On November 25th, December 23rd, December 30th, our holidays, we won't have a meeting here. That's already announced here. December 2nd, a genuine rule with the role of the homeless. That's
Oh, that's one of my other speakers.
that's one of the other speakers. That's Wanda Zimmerman. Should we talk about that?
We need to get with Wanda and make sure we have all our YouTubes that we're going to show here.
Yeah, she's going to be good.
She will be good, I'm
Have you
sure.
heard her?
I looked at the program, it looks excellent.
She's wonderful.
And December 16th in Why Dallas, Untangling the Mystery of Dallas's Rise to Prominence. That's not on the itinerary here, but it's in, if you look up the website, you'll find it. It's on page 3, which I didn't print. But anyway.
Why?
Well, it's paper. A lot of paper. I heard why, anyway.
Does that take us out for the year then?
That pretty much finishes off the year. The next open date for a speaker, for your information, is January 6th. If anybody wants to be a speaker, it's January 6th. So, too cold?
If we survive world economic collapse.
Yeah. Anyway, our speaker tonight is Dione Banks. She's the Director of Community Development, Head Start of Greater Dallas. She's going to discuss how the Head Start of Greater Dallas believes every child should have the opportunity for quality education, good nutrition, and family support. She argues that the agency is a trusted leader in early child development and offers early learners valuable learning experiences and services for a holistic approach to academic success. Diane will also argue that every child needs an opportunity to engage in quality education, as many children face barriers that contribute to lower academic achievement during their education career. And children often begin school, kindergarten, or pre-K already behind their peers. She will conclude succinctly on the importance of, and it is time to ensure that every child, including those challenged by poverty and other mitigating factors, has access to highest quality early childhood education available. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to Dione Banks.
Thank you. I'll go get the waitress.
It's all yours for the next hour.
Okay, excellent. Okay, just a few housekeeping items. For those of you who came in just a few moments ago, you should see 2 Post-it notes on the tables, or extra tables. We're actually in the back. There's extra ones up here if you need them. I can't come to anyone's house without giving away a few items. So I have at least, I think, 3 of these coffee mugs that also come with coasters as well. So we'll do a little drawing for a couple of those. So if you wouldn't mind going ahead and using those sticky notes, of course, to write your name. And Tom, if you wouldn't mind helping me out to collect those. And you can just actually put those right here in this coffee mug. and we'll do a drawing once I conclude.
All right.
Okay?
I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
If you need more, I have a couple here.
Oh, here.
There you go.
That's a beautiful mug.
I enjoy mine.
I need a pen and a sticky.
Cold
Is that better? Right there.
So we fold it?
Yeah, just a sticky, so it's not sticky.
Yes.
See here?
Okay, drop it in the cup.
I need to,
Push it around.
I need a sticky. Tommy, you got
You have another sticky? This is gonna take like an hour.
No, any more stickies?
I do. There you go.
Here you go, who needs a stick?
What are we doing? Putting our names on it?
Yes, I'm doing a drawing for a couple of our signature items. Our collector's items.
Okay.
Here,
So it doesn't stick.
Sit in there.
don't we need to pass the cup around?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the, collect all these stickies.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I followed instructions.
Tom.
Here's a cup.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
In the cup.
That's a great
You fold the
program.
sticky? Didn't fold the sticky.
Yes, you don't want to stick it.
You don't want to stick it.
Thank you.
I don't know, I think it's probably, I don't know, they're all entirely weird costumes that look like pajamas. I mean, the place was packed.
Who needed a pen? Did you need a pen?
So there's got to be
No, I
parties.
gave you mine.
Yes, yeah, I know. I actually just dropped my daughter off at a party before I came here.
What did she dress up?
You know, this year she said she wanted to be herself. She's 10. And
Oh.
so she's really coming into her own
Yeah, I know,
independence and, you know, all that preteen stuff.
Oh, my grandson's here.
Thank you. Okay.
Here.
Have all been served? Okay, did we get all the names? Okay, well, we're just gonna set this over to the side and then we'll do a drawing for that in a few moments. Okay, also, last housekeeping, in front of you is the agency's annual report. Wanted to be able to offer that up for you for additional reading at your leisure. Some of the stuff that I'll be talking about is also covered, what we do, and also our board of directors, our policy council, which I'll talk a little bit more about that as well, as all in this annual report. And then also this lively, lovely, colorful piece of information as well has what we are, what we do, and then on the back of it has all of our locations. Okay, everybody ready? Well, thank you very much to Tom and the College of Complexes for having me this evening. We are so grateful to have the opportunity to come out and talk a little bit about Head Start. I know Debra Kendrick was slated to be on the agenda for the evening, but unfortunately she could not make it tonight. So you have me. A little bit about myself, Dione Banks. I'm actually Dione Banks, Director of Community Development for Head Start of Greater Dallas. Been living in Dallas for slightly under 10 years. I'm actually a Midwest girl. I came from Kansas City before I came here, before we moved here. Let's see, background, I've been in nonprofit for a little over 10 years. Prior to me working for Head Start, I was also working for the American Heart Association. By education, I am a journalist. So I did that for about a year or two out of college, and I decided, we're a dime a dozen, so I'm going to go in and see what else I can do. I also have my MBA as well, so business also is very important to me because my husband's family actually owns a business. So anyhow, really delighted to be here tonight. I've been with Head Start for a little over 4 years, and it is by far the best nonprofit that I've either worked for or partnered with. Okay, a little bit about Head Start. Head Start has been around. How many of you all, by show of hands, know what Head Start is or have heard of it? Okay, good. So everybody's pretty much, so everyone good in the room is familiar with the program, so that's great. Head Start, as you know, has been around for a little over 50 years. It started in 1965 with the Johnson administration with the goal to end poverty, as we were looking at higher rates of poverty at that time. And so the whole idea, of course, behind the Head Start program was to end poverty, and the way that we did that, or the way our approach to doing so, was to give families as well as their children, young children, a head start in their education. Okay, to qualify for the Head Start program, a family has to be income eligible. And so what does that mean? They have to be about 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. So that's about $25,000 a year to made annually for about a family of 4, and then it goes up about $4,000 to $7,000 for each additional family member. Head Start of Greater Dallas has been in Dallas for 40 years. It actually began as a summer reading program out of a church. And we've grown into this 700 employee, 46 center agency. Let's see, we have partnerships with Dallas ISD, Irving ISD, and Lancaster ISD as well. And then we also have partnered with Vogel Alto, which is a homeless shelter, to provide early Head Start and Head Start services there. And then just actually recently, in the last 2 years, we expanded our early Head Start services to early childhood development or daycare centers in South Dallas. So we've been pretty busy expanding and growing. We are federally funded, as you all know, and we really enjoy to have volunteers. So if you are looking for opportunities to volunteer with us, that is something that you can reach out to me. Tom has my information if you're interested in spending time with our little ones, reading or assisting in the center. We cover children ages 0 to 5 years old. 0 to 3 years old is our early Head Start program, and 3 to 5 years of age is our Head Start program. And we have both programs, of course, in our agency. Let's see, what else would I like to cover? We have the philosophy that, of course, that the child is the center of everything that we do, and there's a method, of course, to our madness in our program administration. If we know that if the child is not well clothed, if they're hungry, they're not going to be able to learn, and therefore they won't have successful outcomes both now and later on in life. And so our philosophy is that we provide wraparound or comprehensive services both to the child and their family. So, for instance, if mom comes in and enrolls little Johnny or Juanita or whatever little name you can think of for a little kid, they also sit down with what we like to call our family services staff, okay, which would be the equivalent of social workers, okay. So when they sit down at enrollment, they talk about familial goals for the family. What would you like to achieve during your time that your child was enrolled with us, both for your child educationally as well as for you as a family unit? So we have a lot of parents that go back to get their GED while their children are in our care. Then we have a lot of parents that go back and get their BA or BA, and some often get their MBA or so on and so forth. So it's a really great opportunity for a 2-generational education approach. If there is also a desire to gain financial independence, those family service or those family advocates sit down with that family and say, okay, what are your goals? You want to be gainfully employed, you want to have financial independence. We also provide them with referrals to other service providers that we are in partnership or have MOUs, memorandums of understanding with, to assist that family along that journey to meet that goal, okay? We also provide health services both to the child and to the family. We don't, as per se, Head Start provide those, but we do have referrals, again, that we send those families to so that they can establish a steady medical home if they do not already have one. Mental health services if we're looking at behavior problems, or if we have some mental health problems, of course, with mom, dad, or whoever that primary caregiver is for the child. We also refer that whole entire family to those referral services so that they can get the care that they need. So that's what I mean when we talk about the holistic approach, because we really desire to have the whole family on board and healthy and well so that it has successful outcomes for the child as well as for the family. I should take a break here to just kind of break the monotony a little bit to kind of explain to you, my passion and why I work for the Head Start of Greater Dallas. I'm not a Head Start parent, nor am I a Head Start child. However, when my parents first started off, they were both working full-time and both going to school part-time. And at the urging of my maternal grandmother, she was actually working on her degree in early childhood education, as well as my godmother, who became my godmother when I was born. At that time she wasn't. but she was working on her master's in childhood psychology. They encouraged and really urged my parents to put my brother, my older brother, in the Head Start program. And I have to tell you all that the Head Start program works because I've seen it, of course, and the successful outcomes with my brother and the things that he's been able to do. I feel like he's been able to reach farther and get there faster than I have been able to, and I didn't go to Head Start. So they put my brother in the program. They both were able to complete their degrees and their technical degrees. And he really, within the program, was able to foster his love of music through the circle time, through all the different centers that we engage the children in to build pre-math and pre-science skills. But for my brother, whose name is Daniel, he really was able to look at those the music component and really hone in on that particular vocation. And so he went on and pursued his degree in musical performance from Wichita State University, and then he went on and pursued and completed his master's at the Cincinnati Conservatory of Music. And he studied under Barbara Hahn there. And so today he lives in Berlin, Germany, and he opened up for the Rome Opera 2 opera seasons ago. So when I talk about my passion for Head Start and, of course, making the case for Head Start, I know that it works. And by the time I came along about 9 years later, or 7 years later, my parents didn't need the program anymore. So really what it does is it works, it really helps hardworking families get the direction, the life skills to kind of organize their lives so that they can go on and have, like I said, successful outcomes. From a more technical standpoint, so I showed the heart side of it because it is very close to me because my family is a product of Head Start. But from a technical side, about 25% of children in Dallas live in poverty. Okay, and they don't have access always to quality early childhood education. And for those children who live in poverty, they have higher rates and are high at risk of substance abuse. They attend poorer schools, higher rates of teen pregnancy, those kinds of things. And so what we want to do, of course, is to get them, we want to break that cycle and to lessen those statistical numbers of all of those things that could potentially happen. Now, about 65% of children, 65% of 3 and 4-year-olds do not have that quality health care. Now, what I will, not health care is on my brain. Early childhood education. Now, one of the great things, though, too, that has come about in the last couple of years, if you all have taken note of, is universal health care or an increased amount of funding towards early childhood education. And so that's a really good thing. Head Start is not housed under the U.S. Department of Education. We are actually housed in under Health and Human Services and the Administration for Children and Families. So it's 2 different buckets of money, of course, from a federal standpoint that we draw down from an educational aid. But that universal health care, that health care is on my brain. I think because I read an article this morning, so it's really, I know, on my brain this morning. I apologize for that. But that universal pre-K is good as well because we want as many children as far-reaching as we can get to be able to get a head start on their education, no matter what it is. The differing factor for Head Start is that we have been recognized as a program of excellence here in Dallas for over 10 years. And so, we funnel up, if you will, like I said, to U.S. Health and Human Services as well as the Administration for Children and Families. But we also have a group that lobbies for us, advocates for us, by the name of the National Head Start Association. And so the National Head Start Association is who has recognized us as that program of excellence. And so we're really honored to be able to keep up the good work, of course, to be able to be recognized in that way. Going back to the family partnership agreements, and that's where I talked about goal setting with our families, about 36% of Dallas Head Start families achieve those family partnership goals. The interesting piece about it is that each family is individualized, and so we're really looking at being more data-driven as an agency because, of course, we want to be, but the federal government is also talking about continuous improvement and using data to do that. And so we're looking at those data sets, especially with those family partnership agreements, to be able to increase the success rate for our families to achieve familial goals. One of the things that really kind of plays as an obstacle in achieving that is that a lot of our families are transient. And so we only have them for a short amount of time. It does make it very difficult to, really see the succession long term. They're typically in our program about 2 years, and sometimes less, depending on what the family situation is. They might move to another side of town where we don't offer, or we don't have a Head Start program as close or accessible to them. Or they might choose charter, which is really on the increase in Dallas. The charter schools have increased significantly over the last 5 to 7 years. So it's really kind of dependent on what the family chooses. Let's see, Head Start students are more likely to graduate from high school. Head Start students are more likely to pursue some sort of technical degree as well as or a 4-year college degree. And so that's my brother as an example. And I think, I should stay right there and say, the example that my brother set, in his educational journey was really neat for me because I was, some years behind him, and I saw him taking the steps to enroll in college and, apply for scholarships and then graduate and then pursue. And so, it's really nice to have that example. And he, of course, started off as a Head Start child that really was able to really focus on what his true passion was at a very early age, which was the music. And so that set an example for me to say, okay, I want to do that too. So it's really, a wonderful bonus to be able to have someone who graduates from the Head Start program or moves on and pursues their educational goals, but whatever vocational goals they seek to achieve. Let's see, what else can I cover with you all? I know that you guys ask questions at the end, but I do want to take a break because it's a lot of information. Go ahead.
Okay, I was listening to NPR a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And the mayor of San Antonio said the only way they could break the poverty in San Antonio is to make Head Start mandatory, and they have. The only way they can break the poverty. So they are spending all their money, and everyone who lives in San Antonio will be in Head Start.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So is your funding going to be jeopardized by these massive tax cuts?
Depending on where they land.
Another question.
Yes, so like I mentioned before, we're under the Department of Health and Human Services and not U.S. Department of Education. And so depending on where those cuts land, we could, because we have had an incident in 2013 where the sequestration took place. And sometimes when there is a government shutdown, it can impact not necessarily Head Start program funding directly, but some of our supplemental funding for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, because we do get our nutrition services through USDA.
Right.
So it depends on how they land. And we'll know more as everything unfolds here. Yes, indeed.
What age group, what is the minimum age that you take a child, and is there a maximum age, and do you supplant kindergarten?
What we do is we take children as young as 6 weeks old, and then as old as 5 years, depending on when their birthday lands for them to transition into kindergarten. And so we do, once the children are in our program, enrolled in our program, they stay in, we do transition services into kindergarten. So whatever school that child feeds into, most of our children do feed into the ISDs. The great majority of them feed into DISD. So we send them on to big school, to kindergarten after they leave our services. And I should mention that we do have a pregnant moms program as well. And so what we try to do is have the continuum of care with pregnant moms. So by the time that the baby is born, they're already set paperwork and all of those things that are necessary to enter into the Head Start program has already been set in motion. Yes.
What do you consider is Head Start's competition, if it has a competition, and I would reference something like Montessori,
Yes.
and maybe you can speak about the differences as well.
Definitely. Okay, so there was a time where we did think that we didn't have any competition, but in light of expanded funding for early childhood development and education, we have seen a definite growth in new entrants into the early childhood education market. So who are those competitors? It's interesting because we have to have like a friendly relationship with our competitors too, because we are in partnership with some of them too. So charter schools, ISDs, or the school districts as well, because they are expanding their early childhood education services through the federal funding that's come down to the states and dispersed throughout the state for early childhood development. And then the third question.
Montessori?
Montessori, our model is much like, in terms of the way that we structure our program, is much like Montessori, because we do believe at Head Start that the children's work is their play. And so, we really allow them that free, discovery in the classroom, but we do have structure as well. But the difference is that our program is at no cost to those who
I was just
enroll.
going to ask you if there was a fee, because Montessori is like $18,000.
It is
per
expensive.
child.
Yeah, it can be.
And they're small.
Yes,
Are your
indeed.
classes small?
We do. We have a 1-to-4 ratio for our early Head Start and a 1-to-8 in our Head Start.
Oh, I don't know why more children are in it.
That's exactly what we say.
And the reason the children are transit is because the parents live in apartments and they move and.
It can be any
So
gamut,
forth.
a variety of things. They move for employment. They move for yeah, exactly.
Yes, what fraction of the families earning under 25,000 a year do you actually reach?
So in Dallas, we serve about 8%, only 8% of that population in Dallas, the eligible children in the Dallas population. So we have a very small pool of the market segment, and it's really contingent on what's available federally as funding. So whenever there's an opportunity for early Head Start and Head Start expansion, we go after it, which we did 2 years ago when the funding became available for the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership program. So we went ahead, we wrote the grant, we received it, and we were able to expand it. So we're about 8% of that total eligible population in Dallas. That's what we serve.
So seems to be that the emphasis seems to be on children,
Yes.
but in reality the problem is the social, economic position of families, really.
Yes.
And so unless that gets solved, it seems to me that the general problem cannot be solved, actually. So, reaching only 8% is, sort of, a drip in the bucket, really, considering really the general, disparity of wealth in this country. Really.
Definitely. And like I said, and it's really, whenever that money from a federal standpoint becomes available, we try to go after it as much as we can. You're right, the familial condition, of course, is definitely what we seek to do as relates to those comprehensive services. So of course we want the children in to get the education and the early start on their education within our program, but then we also work with those families as well to make sure that we can solve some of those social concerns.
Well, John, why are we considering these problems that cannot be solved? Why don't we consider them challenges to be solved? And in that regard, I want to know if Head Start has any program or response plan for situations like Hurricane Harvey.
Yes. absolutely. As a matter of fact, when Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, we organized, and unfortunately I wasn't here at that time, I was still actually in Kansas City, but I've heard through many of my colleagues is that when that circumstance took place, we had a lot of those individuals displaced from New Orleans here, and we had our family services team from each one of our situated centers in the area working around the clock, and we had actually a connection. Our family services manager had a connection with those in that emergency situation. We're running the emergency situation here in Dallas to enroll. So we did enroll a lot of children from Hurricane Katrina. And as a matter of fact, also, more recently with Hurricane Harvey, same process, same procedures. Our family services manager met with individuals who are affiliated with the services teams there, and were able to connect some of those families with services. But a great majority of them were very much so determined to get back to Houston.
Really? Yeah, they went down.
Could you explain like what the service say, like if I drop my child off?
Yeah, like a typical
Like
day.
if I had an infant,
Uh-huh.
if I had the next level child, they their meal
Yes.
and the service they get during the day.
Absolutely.
What's a day in the
What's
life?
a typical day in Head Start or Early Head Start? So in the morning, we encourage our parents to volunteer their time in our classrooms. Because what it does is, of course, like I mentioned, that we are federally funded, and so every dollar that we receive from the federal government, we have to earn it back in what we call non-federal time. We fill that bucket in 3 ways: through volunteerism, through in-kind donations, and other resources. And so a great majority of our parents help us fill that bucket through their time. And so we have roughly 8,000 moms, grandmas, grandpas in our database who have children enrolled in a program who, when they drop off in the morning, they sit and work on activities with their child. So what they do is they come in, they might hang their coat up, put their backpack down, they wash their hands, they brush their teeth.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes.
Oh.
And they move, the child moves their name from out to in, which is another, quality and assurance mechanism that we use to make sure we've got all the children here and who is missing. If there is a child missing, our family services, which we, like I mentioned, are much like social workers, do a courtesy call or do a courtesy check-in with the parents to make sure or see why Johnny didn't make it to school that day. And if he is coming, so that we can check him on our roll. When we check our roll, we're checking, of course, for safety measures, and then we're also checking for our USDA funding as well for the lunch that day. Okay, each one of the staff that are stationed at or near the entry pathway into the school, we are checking for signs of abuse. We are also checking for signs of illness, etc., so that we can tell them, oh, he's got pink eye, we cannot have him,
right.
Things of that nature. All the typical things, of course, that we check for illness in schools, just to make sure that we don't get anybody else sick.
Are you locked down?
We actually are. All of our centers, from the front door to the back door, are on lockdown. Even in the classroom, not locked down, but we do have notifiers that if the classroom door is open, or we have a runner who's decided that he's figured out how to open the door, there is a little alarm or some sort of indicator that lets the teachers know that we have a runner. And so, they do at that age, they get their facts.
Is that all public schools? Is that all public schools or all elementary?
I can't speak for the elementary. This is Head Start of Greater Dallas. Yeah, so this is early childhood education, 0 to 5 years old. And so once we get all the preliminaries for the morning taken care of, like I said, we brush our hands, we brush our teeth and wash our hands. Mom and dad or whoever is dropping off the child assist with that. We also do circle time, where we talk about our letters and our numbers and our color and whatever the theme is for that week or that day. And so we have we typically have 2 teachers per classroom, but we also are in partnership with Dallas ISD, what we like to call the School Readiness Initiative, where we have DISD teachers as well in the classroom, because we know many of our children will transition at 5 and 6 years old into DISD, and so it really kind of bridges a partnership between us and them to help those children prepare for big school, and for the teachers also to understand our philosophy too, okay? From an administrative standpoint as well, our theologies and philosophies behind how the children learn. So we do circle time, and then we also have centers. Everything that we do is a method to our madness. So we have our pre-math centers. We also have our dramatic play. So the children can understand roles and all of that. And we also have our, we do have playgrounds and playground equipment and indoor classrooms and outdoor classrooms at some of our centers as well. And like I said, our philosophy is that we do recognize that the children's learning is through their play, and so we allow them that freedom, but we also incorporate curriculum-based education in that time as well. We use, at this point, we're using Frog Street curriculum, which is also being used by DISD as well. And they have a 0 to 5 curriculum specifically that's appropriate for that age group. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have diapers on these babies?
Yes.
So
we do.
You guys have to change
We
diapers.
do. For our early Head Starts,
Yeah.
we do have diapers. We have classrooms, and typically in between each of the classrooms there is a Jack and Jill bathroom for those who are pottied, and changing tables for those who are not. That's not it's not cross-pollination between Head Start and Head Start. We identify and designate, of course, the changing tables for early Head Start and the potties. Of course, Jack and Jill. I mean, yeah, it's like the vernacular in Head Start. It's like potties. We use all of the words that the children can identify, but really the goal is, of course, to do things and say things that are culturally as well as age appropriate for the young little ones. So yes, we also provide formula as well as diapers. So when the parent comes, they do not need to bring school supplies. They don't need to. So we supply all of that for mom and dad. So because we want to be able to remove the barriers to bring the children to school. Okay, so we don't want any family to feel like, oh, because I can't afford notebook paper or crayons or anything like that, then my child cannot go, because the whole goal is, of course, to get your baby kindergarten ready and to allow you to be prepared and remove any financial and any barrier for those families and children to attend. So now we're up to lunch, okay? We're up to lunch every classroom straight up across Dallas at noon is serving lunch, and we have a pretty elaborate, very detailed system. We have cooks and cooks assistants and nutrition staff that are situated at each of our 46 centers, and they have it down to a science. I mean, I know just about enough of the science to get me in trouble, but I do see the benefit. We do family style lunch and so in that the children eat their lunch in their classroom, and the teacher also eats at the table with the children. And so what we do is we serve lunch in, like I said, family style, and that the children also serve themselves. So it teaches them portion control, and so that you don't take too much more than what your stomach can handle. Yeah, so it teaches them fine motor skills and to develop their fine gross motor skills as well, and also language skills, because at lunch we talk about what we did in circle time. We talked about what we're going to do after lunch. We talked about how we played in our centers. So like I said, everything that we do, there's a method to our madness, because we're building skills. We're building life skills for these children. So when mom and dad come in and they wash their hands and brush their teeth, it teaches them how they brush their teeth, how they're supposed to wash their hands. When we eat, we learn how many pieces of chicken we want, or how many servings we should get. Now, do you think you're going to eat that? Okay. And then we also talk about all the things that we did in circle time that morning. So we're building those life skills. Yes, sir.
Do I recall correctly that you said earlier that the family income cannot exceed 2 times the federal poverty line?
200% of the poverty line.
Okay, now the poverty line is $12,000 a year?
This year we just did we had a cost of living increase. It was about $25,000, give or take, for a family of 4.
So they can't exceed $50,000?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. Now we do have, and let me back up on that too, because we also have those it depends on how many individuals, let me just put this precursor on there, it depends on how many individuals are in your family, okay? So a family of 4, it's about $25,000. Now, also, we do accept over income, okay, and that's for children with special needs.
Okay. Now, is that the same for whether you live in New York City or Van Horn, Texas, or Tonopah, Nevada?
I believe it's the same. I believe it is the same.
Well, in your experience, do you think $25,000 a year in New York City is the same as $25,000?
No, it is not. And I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
It is
We're
not.
lucky here.
Yes, we are very
We're
lucky.
lucky.
We are lucky here in that you know, the cost of living, you know, the standard is lower. But you know, I can't speak on New York because you know, the only thing I do know is that it is higher. It is higher.
Everything
It is higher. Yeah, absolutely. But you know, from the nuts and bolts of Dallas, that's what I can speak of.
But doesn't that disadvantage people that are not in high-cost cities? Because in high-cost cities, people probably make more.
They do.
So that would
They typically do.
Okay, so that might disadvantage people, or advantage people in lower cost cities. Oh, all right.
John, do you want it?
Probably a sliding scale.
They're probably. I can't speak
There's
on.
probably a cost of living sliding.
There probably is.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I couldn't.
At some point, yeah.
Couldn't speak on that. Yes. Sir.
Is the, you know, in the supply-demand equation, is it the lack of funds that limits you, or is it the demand from the parents that limits you? What's the limiting factor here?
I think we could all use more money.
So would you then, so, I mean, how do you get into it? Do you apply?
Oh, to start a Head Start program?
Yes. I mean, in terms of, say, sorry, I came along and had a child like, so,
Oh,
okay.
yes, okay,
And
yes.
I qualified financially. So is it the fact there are not enough of me applying, or is it the fact there's not enough money
Right,
to support?
to support. So it is contingent on how much federal funding is available to be able to expand services.
So that's the limit.
It can be a challenge. Now, to answer your other question is in terms of application, so yes, there is an application process for the families to be able to enroll into the Head Start program.
So if you had more money, then you could enroll more people then. So the demand exceeds the supply, if you like.
It could depend. Now, it depends on how well of a program that you have, for instance. So, and how well known your Head Start program is, okay? Because one of the things that we battle, I think probably nationwide with Head Start, is that a lot of people know about the program, but they don't really know about the program and who qualifies and how do you, and what is Head Start. A lot of folks think that Head Start is simply just daycare, but there's so many things that we do beyond that. And so depending on whatever market you're in, there could be a large demand to get into the Head Start program. In Dallas, we at one point did see a large demand to enroll into the Head Start program.
Yeah.
But it is a matter of how many slots we have, and there's a formula, a cost per child, okay, that we abide by, of course, based upon our federal funding and what's available in addition to be able to expand the services.
So how do you cater to the fact that most poor families, the husband and wife, have to work? So how do you operate on picking up children? Because most people might work until 7 or 8
Right,
at
right.
night.
Yeah.
How do they accommodate that?
Sure. Well, we do not offer transportation to and from school. There's just a level of liability that we have to kind of work through. But we do provide transportation services to our field trips, because that's what we do. A lot of our parents utilize public transportation, as well as, you know, we really strive to be accessible in those neighborhoods of high need, okay, where we see an increase demographically or economically of our parents who would qualify. But, you know, we do know that gentrification is taking place. And so that is a challenge for us to be able to move in areas where, you know, we can be highly accessible to those families who are eligible. But we can't move without being able to have funding to be able to do that. So transportation is not, you know, offered. We have many parents who do use public, and a lot of families do own their own vehicles. vehicle. We do stay open from 7 a.m. until 5:30. And so we really try to work with those parents who have to work those non-traditional work hours to arrange some sort of person who can come and get their child if they're not able to. Answer your questions.
This is a question about the situation of the homeless and the interaction that Head Start has with the City of Dallas or Dallas City Council. I know many of the homeless feel that Dallas City Council has done them wrong a number of times, and I've seen cases where the weather has snapped and they just closed the tent cities. There are people all over. I mean, just in real misery. Yeah. Can you speak to that?
So let me make sure I understand the question. So how are we in partnership with the City of Dallas, perhaps?
It's a dual question that
okay.
you know might be able to discuss together. Is how do you interface with the homeless, and how do you feel you are working with or working against the City of Dallas?
Gotcha. So we face our homeless, the situation of our homeless population in Dallas through primarily working with the Vogel Alcove entity, where they work with the homeless families. Okay, and so what we do is, of course, we have Head Start, early Head Start classrooms within their facility, and that's pretty much, you know, kind of our deep engagement with them. As it relates to working with the City of Dallas, I know that our CEO and our COO, they all really work interconnectedly through DISD and the commit group. DISD and commit to Dallas and Early Learnings Matter. And so I think that there's some representation as well for the City of Dallas on many of those coalitions as well. So, you know, through our collaborations with commit and DISD and the other ISD school systems as well that we partner with.
You're okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is your geographical area the City of Dallas, Dallas County, or something else?
It is Dallas County is how we classify ourselves. So of course we don't go, if I can give you kind of the corridor where our centers are located, we go as far east as Mesquite, so we have a Mesquite Center, as far north as Brookhaven College, because we have a center on the campus of Brookhaven College, as far west as Lake West in West Dallas, and Grand Prairie, and then, you know, which is more southwest, and then as far south as Westmoreland. Okay, so that's really kind of where we have coverage. And then of course we have our partnerships with Lancaster ISD, where we have classrooms within Lancaster ISD schools, and then Irving as well, ISD. So that's kind of our
Do I understand here on your demographics page, you say that you have 8% of the potential people that would qualify for Head Start services?
Yes.
Only 8.
Why do you suppose that it's that low?
Say that one more time.
That seems kind of low.
Yeah.
Why, and how does this compare to other entities within the Head Start? Are there similarly low percentages?
Say that. Okay, hold just one second. Just one second. Let me answer your question. Okay, so is that considered what?
Okay. Are you high, low, or about the same in percentage as other entities, other Head Start entities?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So we are one of the largest Head Starts across the nation. We are one of the largest. And so,
by number or percentage?
By the number of children that we serve, and not by the number of eligible population.
We're larger than New York City?
I don't know how large the New York City program is, but we serve over 4,000 children in our program.
And that's 8% of the
potential program of eligible population in Dallas County.
Why do you suppose that number is so? That seems to be a low number.
Yeah, and I think you know, kind of like how we kind of covered it a little bit earlier, is that it's contingent upon the funding available and what becomes available. So if ACF, the Administration for Children and Family, were to release an RFQ for additional funding, we would definitely go after it. And it all is contingent on whether or not our application matches the muster to be able to be awarded for that expansion or that growth for granting.
Is it looking good to expand?
Is it looking good to expand? In terms of available funding?
Numbers and funding.
It's dependent on, it's highly contingent on what
You just
decision,
don't know.
yeah, it's highly contingent on what kind of decisions, Congress makes, because, that's how, we're under a budget, we're under a budget item, in the federal budget, so, it just, it depends on that.
Make sure you ask the question.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's great, this is excellent dialogue, I think it's great, no.
Because at some point or other, I want to tell my story because I spent a year with Head Start as a volunteer.
That's during the,
thank
during
you.
the Republic.
That's later.
No.
That's later.
Oh, okay.
This is Q&A right now.
You have a coach, I see.
Yeah, so, I was near the beginning of it, in 68, and maybe it started before then?
It's 1965.
65, okay, so my
LBJ.
LBJ, yes.
so my viewpoint's really different than yours, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and Head Start has changed over the years, I mean,
so far. From
yes, it
Wait
has.
till you hear what it was like in 68. I don't know if you'll recognize it.
I think I may have heard some stories about what it perhaps looked like back in those days. But it has evolved. There have been so many more collaborative efforts. People that we have groups and entities that we've been able to kind of bring along with us, or they brought us along with them, so that we can really increase the types and kinds of services that we provide, the quality that we provide, and everything. So yeah, in its founding days and years, it's come a long way since then. Any other thoughts?
But doesn't Dallas, Texas have one of the highest percentages of children in poverty?
Yes.
So when you look at like, if 3 people died in a city that hadn't had a murder for 10 years,
Right.
that's a high percentage of murders.
Right.
So we actually,
We have a long way to go, I mean, in terms of getting coverage, especially the kind of comprehensive quality care such as this, right? And, really, the challenge can be what's available in funding to be able to expand. And then, of course, how well, entities can partner, and not just Head Start, but other early childhood development and education groups as well, so that the children not only, our focus is both education and comprehensive services, but from an educational standpoint, for those who are able to partner, to be able to provide the type of quality education so these children can have successful futures, right? To end that cycle, it's all contingent upon many different factors. Primarily for us, it's funding.
Okay, now I kind of remember good questions to ask. Okay, so, all right, without talking about the bad old days, whatever, the early days. Okay, so I want to know the progress of what's happened since 68 insofar as maybe the lobbying for more money and state money, because one of the times I went with a national organization, but we were all from Dallas, and maybe some came from other cities.
Okay.
We were in Austin to lobby for more funds for pre-K. That would be about the year 2002 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Governor Bush, that was his name? Yeah. Spoke to us. Anyway, so the thing is, we were always with statistics to show, how you go 3 or 4 people at a time and to talk to a congressperson. And so we would take turns, okay, let's say one person would talk about the money, and the next one would talk about the statistics and whatever, and the call to action. So I'm just wondering what's been happening with the lobbying for more funds for that, because mine, like I say, in 2003, the thing was pre-K, because it came from, like, in 68 when I was doing that program, it was new, and it was only kindergarten year. And these kids, age 5, did not know how to hold a crayon or mark within the line or the ABCs.
Right.
It was really rough, really the beginning.
So
what's the progression?
Yeah, well, so a lot has changed, since its inception, and of course, as it relates to lobby, because I heard a couple of thoughts in there in your question. So, as it relates to lobbying, Head Start at Greater Dallas doesn't do any lobbying directly. We have what we like to call Friends of Head Start. It's very informal individuals who might have a vested interest in education and have a special heart for Head Start that do that or would like to do that on our behalf. We don't do that directly. The National Head Start Association is a group that does advocate in Washington, D.C. is where they're actually located on behalf of all Head Start programs across the nation. And so our funding comes directly from the federal government. It doesn't funnel down to the states, and then we as an entity, as a Head Start entity, reach out to the state or apply for funding through the state. It comes directly from the federal. Yeah, it can be. It comes directly from the federal government, and so that's how we interface. We interface with directly with the government through our program manager, if you will, that is assigned in each of the districts of the United States. They have assigned programs that they work with to help with training and technical assistance and maybe funding drill downs and all of that. So we don't necessarily work directly with the state as it relates to our funding.
So how does that compete for funds for the programs that are for pre-K?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, things like that.
Okay, so we are housed under a different entity within the federal government. We are under the U.S. Health and Human Services, and which underneath there is the Administration for Children and Families. Okay, so that's one pillar that we are actually housed under. The state funding for the state-funded pre-Ks are under the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. So when they passed additional millions of dollars for to support pre-K programs. That money came from the federal government to the states, okay, and from the states down to the school districts, okay. And so that's there are two different streams of funding. So that's how. And then as it relates to how the program has changed, like maybe programmatically, every Head Start kind of evolved probably at a different pace depending on what they apply for in terms of additional funding, okay? Because not only do we get RFQs to expand services, like expand our program, we also might apply for an RFQ to do a specific type of service, okay? So at varying points they've expanded, right? So we started off as a summer reading program in a church, and then we were under as a summer reading program in a church. So we were here in Dallas. We were very, very small, and then we just kind of applied for available funding to expand,
get your foot in the door.
And then we continue to apply for additional funding to expand Head Start services, and then apply for additional funding that So every program, every grantee, because we are a grantee, because we are under a grant, it probably evolved at a different pace and at a different time frame, depending on what they were able to receive in federal funds through the application process.
Wow. Oh, I met your, I don't know her name, the woman who was supposed to be here.
Deborah?
Yeah. I met Deborah at a Democratic thing. Anyways, she asked her to be a speaker, and she said to bring, that's why I brought things, she said bring anything for the children that they could use, cotton balls, Q-tips, paints. So
we do accept in-kind donations as well as volunteer time when I come and read to the children and assist in the classroom with the teachers.
Are you in Dallas? Because I like to live in Dallas.
Yeah.
Downtown-ish.
We have two centers that are in that vicinity. We have our Roseland Homes Center.
That's right by my house.
Which is right there off of Hall Street. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yep. We have that center, and that center is actually as a part of a partnership that we have with Dallas Housing, and we actually have an additional early Head Start Center off of Bear Street, which is off of 175. That is also a partnership with Dallas Housing Authority, and so the whole idea is, of course, is that if you have subsidized housing and you qualify for that, and we are right there in the core of that facility.
You're right on Hall.
It makes sense for you to also enroll your child as well in Head Start programs.
Is the national entity that's called Head Start, or the state or county entity, are they prohibited from seeking funding from private foundations?
We are not prohibited from seeking, because we have received additional funding to buy buses for our field trips, to expand our technology in our classrooms. So we do.
What about just general operating funds? Typically
we do. I mean, we do some sort of like capacity building from a technology standpoint. That's really difficult to that's difficult. A lot of foundations will not
Do
do that.
you have an active program or a group of people that are set aside to go out and look at, survey the foundations and see which ones might make grants for your type of?
It's me.
There's a book in the Dallas Public Library about this thick that lists foundations.
Foundations, yeah. We have an individual under contract that we work with, and she's pretty savvy.
Well, you could also look for some interns of people that are getting their MBAs and will work for a public sector just to do some of the survey work. You go through it, you look at it, you call them up, you talk to them, and fill out. Sometimes it's an upper game.
It really is.
Maybe you guys submit 20 applications and get one grant, and it just takes it's time and people intensive.
That's true, and then also, like, I know that we took maybe a 2-year break because that's the other piece. So once we get funded, then they won't allow you to come back for another year or two for additional funding or
set up a rotation like the baseball teams do.
Yeah.
Pitchers do.
Right.
The Meadows Foundation.
And we've applied for them. So, any other questions?
No.
Yeah.
Yes, we have another question.
Okay, certainly.
My senior question here at residence.
Yes, is your organization funded as part of the government, or is it really a charity, an independent charity, independent of the government? It isn't, because there's such a bias against government,
There is.
and you'd be accused of another failed government program, you see. So I'm wondering your sort of legal status,
Certainly.
how people regard you.
Yes. So we are a federally funded nonprofit. And so our funding comes directly from the federal government. And we are governed by the federal government. As a grant.
So how do you counter the charge that you're another
failed government program? So there's been some, this body of evidence about 3rd grade, Head Start doesn't work because by 3rd grade, all those gains are lost. And so one of the things that, we talk about internally as a program, both at Head Start entity, Head Start Greater Dallas entity, as well as the Head Start community, is that there are so many different factors that play a role in this loss of the supposed loss of gains in the children by 3rd grade, right? So by the time they exit our program, they've entered into a big school. Well, in big school, we don't have comprehensive services for both the child and the parents, okay? There is not a lot of continuity between teachers and when they get to big school as opposed to when they're in the Head Start program. So there are many different variables as to why perhaps they say there's a loss by the 3rd grade, and as you talk about a failed government program, those are the arguments, of course, that we've seen against the program. But we understand that there are these variables as to why this is supposed loss in information from children.
When you get to the 3rd or 4th, age 4, do you have a curriculum that teaches reading, script writing, and mathematics and stuff?
Yes, we do have, we utilize Frog Street curriculum, and in that curriculum it is all age appropriate, but it is teaching in pre-math, pre-science, pre-reading, and pre-language, and language skills. And so a lot of our children who do leave Head Start are ready and prepared to start reading at the very start of
kindergarten. Can they print their names?
They should, they will be able to write their names. We do have children who may not developmentally, because of there's a delay, who may not get there, but they make gains, in other areas as well. So it just kind of depends on the child. But barring those delays, the children are able to write their name and recognize their name.
Wait, just one question.
Yes.
Let's take a question.
Okay, I'm open. Yeah, whoever. Yeah, do you have more? Do you have more?
No, go ahead. I'll catch you later.
No, that's it. I mean, the majority of our children who leave our program recognize their name and are able to write their name.
Okay.
Right here.
Okay.
How do you handle the children who do not speak English? And also, I have a.
Yes, I have plenty of, I will make sure that everyone who, who needs
Plenty of
extra
back
books,
here.
we'll get you guys extras.
Plenty of books.
So as it relates to second languages, or first languages, as we like to call them, we have a dual language program where we allow the parents, and this is another part of our parent engagement piece, is that we do believe that the child's first teacher is their parent. And so we have structured ways and activities and pieces of things that the parents can take home, like backpacks, language backpacks, that they can take home. And in it, it has a couple of activity sheets in the child's home language, their native tongue, as well as some tools like a red crayon, a green crayon, whatever, and then maybe a ruler and some numbers and that kind of thing. And so what we do is we encourage those parents to, of course, teach the child the color of the crayon in their home language, in their native tongue. And so and then also in English, so that those families who are making that transition linguistically, they all can learn as well as the child.
That's wonderful.
And we have over, I don't know, 200 different dialects and languages within our program. So we have, Somali, Vietnamese, and of course Spanish, and all the different dialects within those languages as well. So we have, and then we also hire staff that also represent those languages as well, or those cultures as well, specifically in the centers where there's high volume.
Okay, I want to go back a little bit to what you were bringing up. He was bringing up about how it's lost by third grade.
Okay.
Okay. Because these are the talking points that come out and they make waves all across the country.
Right.
As we know.
Mm-hmm.
And in public and all the discourse and funding and all the rest of it.
Certainly.
Okay, so about many topics, and this is one of them, and this is, I am such a big thing. My mom was a teacher. I did the volunteer thing. I thought about being a teacher. That's why I volunteered for a time for my freshman year in college, because I go, am I going to do the teacher track or something else?
Sure.
I need to decide something else.
Okay.
But, okay, so if that happens by third grade, and I already knew some statistics going back about the effectiveness of the early education, whether it's the pre-K or the kindergarten, and I didn't know this thing exactly about things being lost at third grade. So, okay, and perception is sometimes, more out there than the reality. So what are the reality things to counteract that? Because I really am so big on, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Early education is worth better because it lasts much longer and gives it gives it the Head Start. That's why it's called Head Start.
Right.
And so what are the real statistics to counteract that really are out there, and how are they out there, and how are you making a difference to get it out there into the community that gets it out to the community, the state, whatever matters?
Right, and so one of the things that we're really trying to do proactively so that we can have that body of evidence and that data to be able to counteract that just real hardcore data is, through our partnership, we're looking at ways through our partnership with the ISD is to assign a preem number to the children who transition.
A what number?
Like a preem number, like a identification number.
Oh, okay.
For the children who transition from our program into the ISDs, or the Dallas ISD specifically, so that we can follow, so we can track and be able to have that hardcore data to be able to say, no, because in these areas, in these domains, as language development or reading and math and science, these are our kids. These are our kids. And we can, see that they've made X, Y, Z gains.
So what's the control group besides those
children who haven't been in the program? Okay. But then we also have to deal with those variables, and so that's still something that we're working through to see how we would be able to kind of define and really identify data, statistically that no, that's not necessarily the truth. We do have, social data, of course, that we can. Kind of in a way combat, right? Mm-hmm. So like earlier I said, we have this body of evidence that Head Start children are less likely to succumb to teen pregnancy and substance abuse, and they graduate from high school, and so they get these social, acceptable things, under their wing or not, of course, is the goal, depending on what it is, when they, as a result of our program. So, there's a lot of data desired activities that we are working towards, because in the climate that we're in right now as it relates to Head Start is that, they are pushing all Head Start programs to become more data focused and using that data for continuous improvement for both our program structure as well as for the families and the children.
Improving, you should continue to get the funding.
Well, yeah, that funding does play a huge role.
So do people lobby for you?
Yeah, National Head Start Association. There's a group that does do some.
And they're all in DC?
Okay.
Any more questions?
Okay, let her sit down.
I'm open.
You can speak, okay.
All right, now.
That's great.
Thank you.
You wanted to do
Okay.
this.
Oh, I think we do have a. Is there a question?
One question.
Yeah.
Here.
In your summation, or your opinion, what is the essence of the gist of the germaneness of the protein concept of what you're doing in a nutshell?
We are providing education and wraparound services for families to have successful outcomes.
That's good.
You understood that question, that's amazing.
For the kids and the family.
You are amazing.
The kids, the family, and the community. For the kids, the
Family and the community, essentially. Because when you impact the child, you impact the family as well. And then ultimately you do. I mean, that's, the long-term strategy is impacting.
You impact the universe.
And yeah, there you go. Yep,
That's right.
absolutely.
One child at a time.
Yes, and we hope to do more at a time. Thank you very much. Okay, real quickly, if you haven't completed the little blue sticky note with your name, please do so, because I've got some goodies to leave behind for you all.
Where do we get that?
Oh, okay, so
Here.
we have some sticky notes while you.
Here's one.
Okay.
All right.
Let me see. I forgot how many I brought. So. Oh, and I have some extra annual reports too, if you need.
Yeah, I want
Did you feel one, John?
I got it.
While we
Thank
wait
you.
for everybody. Okay.
Does anybody need?
Okay.
Did you want it for one?
No.
I had one.
Okay, so I have a lovely
Okay.
tote bag.
Wow.
Right here. A lovely tote bag.
Mix them up a little.
Okay, yeah, right.
Otherwise,
So we have that. Tom, you wouldn't mind being my Vano, would you? Okay. And then you have a cup. Let's see, hang on. All right, and I actually have 2 tote bags and 2 cups.
Did you need
Okay.
I just gave them.
All right, so just a second. So you all know what you're getting. I have 2 of these, okay? And then I have this lovely cup. I have 2 of these cups that have our logo on it. And then also with the cup, it comes with a nice little coaster. So you don't mess up. You don't mess up your lovely furniture at home. Okay, so we've got to do 4 names. Okay? Yep, I'm mixing them up. Okay. I have Jan Naxa. That's you? Okay, Jan, bag or cup?
Jen, go for
This
it.
is a nice bag.
But
I don't know that I would use it.
Okay.
But I have cups for lots of things.
I'll get you here.
That's too
If you
small.
want it, it has this one. If you want the cup, it comes in here too.
I think I'm gonna take this
The
and
bag?
take it to things I have to do with school.
There you
Take it to my
go.
niece
What's
and
really cool about that bag too is that if you are doing bagless or paperless,
Okay.
you could just, put this in
Oh, it has
like
a
this.
snappy
and
thing.
snap. And put it in the back of your car. That's right. So you can put your groceries in there. It's a nice little hard base,
And this
okay?
is a nice reminder with my bag collection of something that I did one time.
Okay, Jan, put it on your shoulder and let's model
All
it.
right. Okay.
It goes with your
There you go.
hat.
It wasn't your hat,
Awesome. Okay, here we go. Mix up. Tom, would you like to put it on your sticky name, please?
Look at that.
Okay, well, I want to get a good shot of the cup here too while we're picking the name.
Okay. Okay. We have JR. Bag or cup? Or mug, rather.
Let me do the cup thing.
Okay, so inside it should have your mug and your coaster, okay? Nice, okay, all right, so we got 2. We have the one actually that I'm drawing from, and the one that I brought my materials in, okay? Are we ready? We have just a mug and a bag left. Susan Dwart, is it Dwart? Dorothy? Okay.
Oh,
your birthday.
I definitely want the cup.
You want the cup?
And the sauce.
Okay, well, hold on, because I got to give you this one. All right. So one more name, and that is for the bag. All right, here we go. Martha. So you, awesome.
You can redraw that. I have plenty, you can.
Oh, okay.
I'll re-gift that.
Oh, okay.
I'll re-gift it. I have
If you have plenty of bags.
Plenty of bags.
Okay, all right. Let's see who we have. Tom Berry.
They're the same household, they're the same household.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Husband and wife. Yeah.
All right. Pat. Okay. Awesome. All right, so thank you everyone for your time. And I will put this back in here. I didn't have much to put in. There we go. There is your cup.
That goes to Susan.
Oh, I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really nice.
And then
I've never heard of a speaker bringing us gifts.
well,
Really nice. Head Start.
it's, like I said, not a lot of folks know about us. Not a lot of folks really know about us.
Keep the bag.
Are you sure?
Yes, for the next meeting. I'm all about saving money for
Oh,
nonprofits.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's very
Really
thankful.
good one.
Are you sure? Is anybody dying though? Is anybody dying to have this back?
I cherish mine.
Our
Okay.
meeting is not quite over yet, because now we have the rebuttal period.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Tom, did you want to do the introduction?
Yeah.
We're gonna have fun. Okay.
Anyway, I thank our speaker for a great presentation. And now it's your turn to talk, so anybody that wants to get up here, come on up here and you get to respond to the speaker had to say, and either for or against. You're first. And Jan is second.
Okay.
I saw his hand go up first. I read your name.
Peter,
Peter.
I really have one point to make. I have been teaching in an alternative school for 10 years, and next week will be my last week.
Oh, that's very
So I deal with kids whose brains are unexercised, undeveloped. They don't have any interest in learning, and they're years behind.
Ages?
Years.
Years.
No, their age.
High schools, whatever. I'd like to point out, in terms of Head Start, and thank you so much, that there's a natural filtering process that goes by. If my daughter went to the magnet schools, and the DISD gave her a great education, but all the kids who went to that school, parents were aware of those schools and put them in. So you kind of know if your kids didn't go to magnet school, there's a bunch of kids with some caring adults in their life because they got it in there. And I would assume that's also true with Head Start. And if you got the last 8% instead of the first 8%, I think you'd have your hands full. And that's really my point. I think there's just really one huge variable as to whether or not children will succeed. And that's simply if they have caring adults in their life.
That's right.
Without caring adults in their life, it's only the exceptional human being, which I do not include myself in, who can overcome that. So I know so we're kind of stuck, and when you have these kids being brought up and there's nobody there caring for them, they just become broken people. It's no fault of their own, but nonetheless, you don't want your kids anywhere near them. So that's my only point. The biggest variable, I think, in terms of whether or not a child succeeds is whether or not he has parents. That's it.
Before you sit down, I think everybody knows that. So what is your personal solution to that?
Oh.
And everything has to start
Next
with
week is
one.
my last week. I would say that I would say in our school, the way you make those kids behave, I remember our first year there was a new principal, and her policy was, let's love these kids, and they'll change.
Yeah.
And those kids took the school over. And, you know, I turn around, there's a pencil coming in my face. And then once we got a new principal in, and she changed, and we got a new principal in, and he introduced them to the police, the first thing. And we had no problems. And once they knew there were consequences for their actions, we could then, you know, once they knew they weren't in charge, they had a little bit, they gave them a little freedom to be children, or to not have to be so hard, and we could then maybe ease up a little bit, but it still can be very difficult.
Is this a grade school or high school?
This is an alternative school where all the kids who get in trouble go.
Oh, wow, this is.
So I would say no matter what, yeah, I would say that's probably true in society. If we isolate people from the consequences of their actions, I don't know how they improve. Okay, but that is almost inhumane to do in some regards. So I don't know. I don't have a solution.
That is so sad.
Okay.
Jan, you're next.
That all begins in the home in the first place. Making children aware that they're...
Hi, I'm Jan Naxon. I'm the one who worked, volunteered for a year, my freshman year at UT Austin. I volunteered to work, a little louder? Okay. I volunteered to, it wasn't work, it was a labor of love, to volunteer at the Head Start. Okay, so I'm going to flash back to another time. I'm old. Decades ago. It was the beginning of the program. As far as I know, it could have been the first time they had it in Austin. I don't know. I don't even remember how I found out, but I know that my incentive was that all my sorority sisters and in the nice dorm and all my privileges and everything, that most every female at that time wanted to be a teacher, or at least in my sphere there. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to do that or not. I come from a line of it, but I didn't know. So that's why I volunteered. And I found out I liked it, but I started on another route. Journalism, television production, and things that I went on to do, a lot of marketing and advertising, and it's been good for me. So, at that time it was new, it was real simple. I think I went once a week and for just an hour or two. And it was sort of a shock to me because I remember in my first sociology class and finding out how much money the average American makes, I was just like, huh? I mean, I was so, you know, North Dallas protected, and I thought everybody was kind of rich and maybe there were some poor people, but what do I know about that? So it set me on a way to study more of that, to do more volunteer program. Just doing that from that freshman year, it propelled me into a lot of things on campus that I worked on. A lot of things were happening, protesting the war, First Earth Day, just lots of coming out and forgetting the sorority Sue and going protesting, marching and stuff. So in the classroom though, I remember so clearly that they didn't know how to draw within the line. They didn't even know crayons. It's almost as if they didn't do anything. These were 5-year-olds. Like they didn't do anything before 5 years old. So it was pretty sad to see at the beginning of the year. But they made some progress. And the other thing, these kids were of course all poor. As far as I remember, they were all Hispanic. Maybe it was just the way the neighborhood was and where the school was or something. I don't remember black kids being in the class, but I remember there was a white teacher, and she was always thankful that I came, and I could almost do whatever I wanted with the kids, just kind of wing it. There wasn't anything special or a list for me to do. It wasn't organized. It was just go there and do what you can. I do remember this, though, because I lived in a privileged dorm, and I saw how in a private dorm, that every time it was someone's birthday, the dorm owner had a great big cake waiting for us in the cafeteria at night, and everybody would just condescend into there and make a slobby mess. And I said, I don't want that for my birthday. In May, I asked them a week ahead, I said, can I have my birthday cake and I can take it to these kids in South Austin and I'll celebrate with them. Now, I also remember buying them hats and those blowers and like little puzzle things, lots of things that I'd had as a kid. And the teacher was so thankful. She said, these kids have never seen anything like that. They've probably never had a birthday cake for themselves. They've everything. And I was just, it was so eye-opening, and to see them appreciate it so much. So that's my experience, and I've talked about it a lot, every chance that I get. It's amazing how something that happens to you in life has such an impact. And okay, so let me just kind of look at my notes to see. Oh yeah, I remember that they could not crayon within the lines even. They didn't even know they were supposed to do that. It was pretty bad. But they made progress. Okay. So, let's see, I talked about that, I think I kind of covered it all. But my experience, that was my first experience of anything like that, and I think it really just set me on a path of volunteer work, and then later with National Council of Jewish Women, B'nai B'rith, different things like that. I've always been the one to volunteer to do something to do with that, and I'm part of the hippie program. I've participated in that. You know what hippie program is?
Oh,
H-I-P-P-I-E. Yeah. So I volunteered in this last year. I mean, like we would greet the kids off of well, probably Dallas County school buses, but anyway, they would come from Oak Cliff and all that, and then we would take them around the museum, or like at the, I had a great day with them at the Arboretum, because they have that nature thing. It's separate from the regular part of the park, and it's really fabulous if you have any kids or grandkids to take them there, or go yourself. It's like a wonderland, but it's all nature. And so to see and to be with those kids, it just reminded me so much of, and a lot of what I started on that path has helped me with 7 nieces and nephews, although I never had kids and kind of never wanted them. I think I was part of that, Geo population growth, or wait and have your career. I was the beginning of that. But with my, 7 of them in Dallas, I've been able to kind of do things with them and kind of know where they were at those points. Talked about my birthday. I don't know what else to say. Do y'all have any questions about my experience? I mean, it's just, I knew I had to come tonight. I just knew I had to. And it was just so enlightening, and it's so great to see the progress, and I just hope the funding continues, because so much of our national government is about defunding everything, it seems like. And there's just no reason for that, because every time I went to lobby for anything about, and I've been a few times, it's for each dollar that we spend, we get back either 3 times or 9 times or something like that. I mean, it's been for education, it's been for, one time it was for the Motion Picture Society, for funding to bring the movies back after that went to New Orleans after Katrina. And then we want to bring it back to Texas. So it can be something, anything, and I'm kind of in that community too. So I encourage anybody to kind of think about what my path is and what you've had in this kind of area, and anything that you can bring to any kind of conversation to encourage education, educational funding, continuation, or any families you know, or any poor kids. I know, I do simple things. Since I don't have kids, I keep games, toys, just stupid stuff, or something I see at the garage sale in the trunk of my car. And I used to give it away to my nieces. Well, nieces and nephews are all grown now, but I still have this habit. And if I find somebody, or I'm at a gas station or somebody, whatever, and they've got a kid, I say, hey, I have a few things left over from, and I just open my trunk and give it to them. I also keep some scarves. And I see somebody sitting in front of a 7-Eleven or somewhere, and it's cold out. I say, hey, I think I have a scarf I don't want. I just get out and give it to them. So, there are the little things that we can do from our background, our learning, our seeing, our doing, that can make our world better. And I thank you so much for all that you've done and this program has done to help our community, to lift it, to give these kids a chance, and a good chance, and a solid foundation. And it almost, for what they get, it almost seems like it's better than some of what some other kids in the suburbs who are privileged get, because the parents are so busy working, they just drop them off, pick them up, and just, they're just so rattled from 2 parents working and all the activities, or they're dropping their kids off here and there, and they may not even have some of those good controlled things that your program has. So in some ways, they may have a leg up on some suburban kids, or some of these communities that kind of take things for granted, or put them in private schools. And I've been in both public and private schools. I know the difference. There's some good and bad things. But anyway, so that's about it. Anybody have a question about that, or anything I mentioned, or anything? Did you learn anything? I mean, we learned a lot today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, that's it. Same thing. Oh, my husband. Oh, you're doing it.
What you did is so interesting.
Well, I almost feel obligated to get up and speak because Head Start was happening in my home during the 60s. My dad was a 4-state regional director working under Jules Sugar. I don't know if the name means anything about the history of Head Start, but guess who was coming to dinner? Could have been just about anybody back in those days. We had a big table, big dining room table. And my one challenge, I guess, would be that I know back in the early days, the mentality of Head Start and everyone around it was to give people a hand up. It really was, and it sounds like Head Start has really grown and developed in that regard. But just cautionary note that a lot of people have the attitude. I noticed the attitude in the mid-'80s, early '90s even, where it had kind of changed into the mentality of a handout rather than a hand up. And I think that I know from the early days that was really the feeling, was a hand up. And congratulations for keeping that going.
Well, thank you very much. I certainly admire your enthusiasm, and I hope you continue. Of course, as you recognize, I come from Europe, and I'm married to a Finnish lady. And of course, in Finland, it's totally different. My wife, in Finland, children don't start school till they're 8 years old. That's when they start. And the teacher stays with them all the way through to what would be about 7th or 8th grade. And of course, in terms of the international achievement tables, Finland comes out near the top. Now, I think the difference is that every culture, every child is born in Finland gets a box from the government. It can be like a sleeping box, clothes and stuff like that. I think the problem is cultural, Jim. This country worships money, and really, because it worships money, it doesn't care about people. And I think that to compete in the world, there has to be a cultural change in America. You have to start caring about people. Because the economy only thrives if you care about people and ensure that everybody has a job and is educated for that job. Okay? Now, Head Start seems to be, you know, a worthy thing to do, try to do, and I like your point about trying to help families, because I see a lot of, I think the problem is we have, as in England, a low-wage economy. Because there are lots of immigrants come in, and they're low-wage, low-skill, and so that sets a very low level of income. In England, being part of the EU, we have literally millions coming from Eastern Europe. Same deal, really. They're low wage. In fact, they're reasonably highly educated, but because they're from outside, they can be exploited, and so you have a low wage economy. So, but in this world where you have, we're now in this globalized world, which I don't totally agree with, but we are where we are. And you have this, what, 1.5 billion Chinese competing with 300 million Americans, okay? Now, you cannot survive if you have a low-wage, low-educated population. So that's the fundamental difference. Now, the other thing, America has some of the finest universities in the world, Harvard, Yale, but it also has internationally a especially at the ages of like 13, 14, America starts to fall behind. Now, it's Head Start, I think at the younger ages it competes quite well. I look from the statistics I've seen. But about that middle school, things start to fall apart. Because I think there is this low marriage mentality, and I speak to Hispanic kids a lot, almost every week in fact. And their main aim is to go out to work right away. They're not interested in staying in school. What they don't realize is that in fact, you cannot have a whole country with low skilled work and compete. I mean, you know, you're dragging the whole thing down now. So I see that the main problem really is as Jim says, cultural. So, but when you worship money and you really don't throw the effort into looking after people, I mean, it goes all around. Obviously, it's having food banks that we see growing. We have education now that's at a higher level, which is virtually unaffordable. You know, and you can't operate a country with that sort of cultural disaster going on. And I think countries that pursue this neoliberal policy, which I call it, is a total disaster. And unless we have a cultural change where we really take care of people, and I always say this, and create jobs, because I talk to Hispanic kids and they say, you don't realize how hard it is. And when I go back to England, people say, can you get me a job? And here they say, can you find me a job? Because if I can just hand out jobs. Now, but there is no mechanism really. I mean, yes, we have vulture capitalists that hang out, I work for a company, hang out outside Berkeley, California, waiting for colleges to develop ideas, and then they'll capitalize on them. And you'll work 40 hours a week for for little pay, and the vulture people will clean up. So there's no real mechanism really to get the country. Now, yes, Jim, it has to be a cultural change, but you have to worry about healthcare. You have to worry about education and housing. Those are the three prime things you should all worry about. Now, when you don't give a damn about that, which most politicians do not, I don't care what party they are, I've never heard people articulate that and have plans to solve that problem. Okay, yeah, you're on the road.
That's developed from my profession that says, well, if you find something that works, then try doing some more of it. See if it works with more. If it works with them, make it as big as you can get it. Let me draw you a basic chart that goes back into the 70s, about 45 years. I'm going to draw you a curve, and that is the income, the average income in the United States, factored for inflation, and the average performance at graduation level from school. Okay. Well, guess which one of those lines is the income line?
Second.
No. It's the curve, upward. Our income has gone up tremendously.
Is that GDP or the actual mean income?
Personal income.
Inflation adjusted?
Inflation adjusted. Personal income.
I tend to disagree with that.
I can't tell you how many reputable scientific chart drawers who've drawn basically the same picture. The point is, our educational system is not working. Is that because of the bad educators? I don't think so. I've had a lot of friends who've been educators, and I think they're the finest people in the world. I don't know our speaker tonight, but if I had to grade her on the spot on all the money that's in my pocket, I would bet she is darn good. She's very impressive. She's articulate. Her face and her voice convey caring and all that. There's one thing that's very consistent about the presentations that you and I read or hear on this subject. And that is, if we think of the human life being, you know, let's say 80 years, and we start off right here when they're preschoolers, and we try to take them up to high school graduation level. Well, you know, we weren't the parents. We didn't start at the beginning. I read today, yesterday, probably yesterday, we have a huge percentage of immigrants. Texas is the second largest state in the union in terms of immigrants. California, as you can imagine, is number one. We're number two. No English is spoken in the house. Now, if they're from Kuwait, they won't find TV programs in their language, or they're from Somalia, they won't find the TV programs in their language. But if they're from south of the Rio Grande, they do. So, the common problem is the parents do not adopt English as a spoken language inside the home. The TV doesn't even have English language in the program on the screen. And so when the poor child, by requirement, must go to kindergarten, and they've grown up in a household like that, or they've grown up in the household, I'll give you another simple example. A never married or 3 times divorced mother with 3 children and no father in presence who works 3 jobs to keep the family alive. I admire the endurance of that fine lady's endeavor. But I didn't put her there, right? You didn't put her there. She's there. But she's done the very best she can. As a result, the children get almost no parental attention. And so when they get to the school, my teacher friends tell me it's almost like they went out to a third world country and just brought some folks in and dropped them in the classroom. The immigrants also frequently move their children 3 or 4 times a year in the school. If they think the immigration officials are about to hit the apartment, they all pack and move. So teachers lack continuity. They have a very difficult job. But when we look at the problems that exist, it's very difficult to look at all the people who live at Preston Road and Royal Lane who have a working couple with professional jobs. They send their kids to a good public school or a good private school, and they have their life all together in terms of their own goals and objectives. To have them look at what our noble speaker has to deal with every day and try to bring these kids up to a par where they can do some good. I'll shut up pretty quick. I was shocked. I was really shocked when our speaker, in a rather low tone of voice, I must say, it was reduced, when she mentioned the 3-year test results. I've probably read 15 different test analyses of students who are being placed in pre-kindergarten facilities of some sort or another, whatever they choose to call it. And it does cause improvement. They don't enter kindergarten not knowing their ABCs. They don't enter kindergarten not knowing how to count to 10. They don't enter kindergarten with a lot of other things that the kindergarten teacher is starting off from 0. Of course, we didn't have kindergarten when I went to school. We didn't have kindergarten when my 3 children went through school. When my grandson went to school, we did. So we've progressed. Well, kindergarten was supposed to take care of all that. And it did. So, if you don't have measurable results after they get to 3rd grade, then it's really not much different than you see if you go up here to the Northwest Highway, LEJ, Coit on the west, Spring Valley on the north. There's a humongous neighborhood of apartments in there. In the elementary school, we'll typically have 27 languages spoken. And a lot of those people hit that school for the first time in 3rd or 4th or 5th grade. Well, guess what? They just ramp up in a hurry. So early childhood development does not guarantee results later in terms of later elementary school performance. And of course, when we all get in junior high, most of us get a little bit crazy for 2 or 3 years. And we become almost impossible for teachers to deal with. And when you look in the Dallas Independent School District, which I graduated from, you have a very high percentage of people who don't graduate, particularly male. Those boys are not doing a very good job of staying in school, are we? And that's true. So for anybody who has a job and the willingness and the commitment to step in and do things that are really the responsibility of parents, I got all that from my parents. I wasn't deficient when I went to 1st grade. I went to an old 1880s elementary school. And then my parents moved out to this, when I was in 2nd grade, we moved out to what was in the suburbs. I was almost a year ahead of my co-students, going to that old beat up school that they later demolished. So schools don't have to be bad, particularly if you have early parental support. I can still remember sitting in the rocking chair in my mother's lap and her reading me childhood books. You just can't imagine what that implanted in my mind. She caused me to not only love her, but to love people around me and to understand an awful lot of human behavior. And to any of you who have no concept or no belief in divinity, I would just say to everybody, though, I wish I was divine and I could come up with a solution to all of that. It's very complicated. And I have the utmost respect for anybody like our speaker tonight who will work on it, because it's an awesome task. Thank you.
I guess I'm the last one standing. I want to thank our speaker. He thinks he did a great job here tonight. Got us all thinking. I empathize with what John here talked about as far as society, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and how we have to turn things around. My background, I was a chairman for a labor union for 20 years, and I did a lot of things. But one of the things that struck me is that in this country, as John mentioned, we're in decline in many respects. We're $19 trillion in debt right now. And the problem is we're fighting, you're working for federal dollars, trying to get tax money down here to take care of things. And you're going to get lost in the shuffle, I'm afraid, when we realize how much debt there is, and they're going to start cutting programs. And then we're going to cut some more programs and hurt more people. This is not a good thing. We have to turn this all around. And with $19 trillion in debt, it's astronomical. And what has to, if you look at history, one of the things that struck me is that machines replace people, machines don't pay taxes. We've had a constant automation since the Industrial Revolution. And today in history, I remember, I'm from Chicago, the Haymarket riots occurred in Chicago, and that was over automation in the railroad industry. And it was automation in society, and they were pushing for an 8-hour day at that time. And people were screaming, and there was a lot of unemployment, and they eventually got an 8-hour day. It was the Adamson Law, 1916, established an 8-hour day in the railroad industry. Prior to that time, there was no 8-hour day. They had single time for overtime, which outweighed fringe benefits at the time because there weren't any. In 1938, the federal government passed a federal law the Fair Labor Standards Act, which reduced the work week from 60 to 40 hours and the work day from 10 hours to 8 hours. They did not cut the pay. You know, the same take-home pay in 8 hours they made in 10. It was a federal law, not a state law. It only applied to interstate commerce. Within 5 years, big business and labor went to each state legislature to put the states on a shorter workday because misery little company want to eliminate their competition. That's how we had the 8-hour day and a 5-day work week, and that's how the rest of the world followed. At one point, after World War II, we were probably the only country in the world that had everything still intact. Other countries, all their economy was destroyed, their infrastructure, everything was gone. And so we were on top of the heap in that sense. John points out that the FDR and company, they wanted to, the John Maynard Keynes wanted to talk about putting in the balanced economies throughout the world, but it never happened. We didn't buy into it, and it didn't happen. Now, what's happened is that we've reached a point where machines have replaced people. Machines don't. We have 25 million people out of work in this country, either unemployed or underemployed. That's our real problem. And if we don't do something about it, all the other programs we have are in dire jeopardy, including yours. So I'm looking at what has to happen in the future. In my view, we need a shorter workday. And we can't get that because we got the best Congress money can buy. And they're owned by the corporations. And so we need to put tariffs on corporations overseas so we get the jobs back here. But we can't do that because the corporations control the Congress. So we got to get the Congress to represent the people instead of representing the corporations. How do we do that? Well, what will Congress vote for that would make that happen? In my view, they will vote for free airtime, so that they would have the last 90 days of a general election, they would get free airtime. The media won't like it because they'll have to raise the price of advertising in order to pay for the free airtime, but they'll do it. And the Congress will vote for it because there's no history of a challenger being an incumbent in this century. It hasn't happened because challengers don't get any money. I know, I was there. Anyway, the point is, if you did that, things would change. Congress would represent the people that do the electing instead of representing the people buying their vote in Washington. That would change some of the mentality in this country of who we stand for and it would be more for people than for money. So the end result then would be we'd have more people working, paying taxes. We'd have less people not working, draining taxes. The government get a twofold benefit of increased tax revenue, not raising taxes. There's less bills to pay for people that aren't working as they'd be working. You could straighten out your $19 trillion in debt. You could add to your school programs. You could make a better society. And I applaud for what you're doing here today. And my biggest discouragement is only 8% in your program, and it should be 98%. Right. And it's good to know that you're a demonstration in society that early child care really works, and it's a benefit to society, and it improves things, and we have to work hard for it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You get the last word.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you all for all of your comments, your rebuttals, and of course your support of the Head Start program. Found a couple themes, of course, throughout some of the rebuttals is of course caring for children and of course the work that it takes to build a better community. And I think that what I could add to it is, and of course, dealing with some of the specific issues of the children, okay, and dealing with those issues so that we can create a better society. One of the things that we all try to identify within the Head Start program is those pathologies that run consistently as themes in these families, and working for these families through our family services providers to be able to address those pathologies so that it isn't this revolving door of alcoholism or poverty or some of those things that we also often see that become a barrier in success in families. One of the things I was talking with one of my colleagues about the other day, actually earlier this week, is as we're going through all of our processes and procedures to be able to conduct these services, and we can easily get bogged down by, did we check this box, did we put an X by that? But if we focus on the children, if you focus on the children, you keep the children in the center of those processes and those procedures, etc., then everything will fall into place. And so really one of the things that, I would encourage you all to be able to help us to in your everyday work or in your in groups like this or in the social or other social groups that you're a part of or engaged in is to focus on the children, because that's the business that we're in, and then everything else falls into place. And that is my final word. And I thank you for your rebuttals. I thank you for your remarks. And I
Well, that's it for tonight. Our speaker, they close here at 10:30, so our speaker's here if you want to talk to her. And but that's it for the formal program. Thank you and see you next week.